This is surviving the music industry.
That sounds sick.
I didn't think about how that sounded.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Music Industry, SMI. I'm Brandon Harrington, and this is my podcast. Welcome to my life. Welcome to my world. What's going on, all you people out there? It's kind of a dumb question. I know it is. I know it's dumb. It's a little weird because we're all in the same headspace in this time and planet that we're in. Like, what is life right now? I know this is a typical conversation everyone is kind of having right now, but it's, how are we dealing with it? I don't know. We're all in some kind of isolation. I'm here with a partner in crime, and then I got another criminal that's 7 years old that runs around. So I'm not isolated, but we're isolated. If there's anything that's going to prove during this time, it's either divorce rate is going to go up or you become so much closer to somebody. I'm not saying that's happening in our life. I'm just saying. All right, that's because you're going to get on each other's nerves. You're going to just scratch and claw. Children are going to get kicked out of the house. That actually happened yesterday. Next door neighbor kicked one of their kids out of the house. The PIC and I just kind of looked at each other and just thought, is this it? We're never going to see that kid around. Oh man, people are just kind of losing their minds being isolated. It's insane. I think some of the saddest things, though, it's not funny. Suicide rate is definitely up. People aren't used to being isolated with their own thoughts and emotions, and that's always kind of been a passion maybe of mine, a hidden agenda of SMIs. I don't want anybody to feel like they're alone in their own headspace. So there's hotlines that are still open. There are people still willing to talk during this time, so you don't have to be so isolated. A lot of states in your local communities, they're having these support channels that you can at least go and check out if you are having problems of just high anxiety, depression. There's things out there that can definitely help you out, so you got to seek it out. But also, I'm online. I'm definitely no therapist. I can be just as depressing as the next person, and it happens on the huge. So I don't know. Yeah, the birds of a depressed feather kind of flock together. So if you need somebody to talk to, it's at SMI Podcast. And of course, you can go to smipodcast.com, drop us an email. If you're a boomer, I don't know, or a publicist. Boomer or publicist, they're kind of the same thing. They all do email. But for what it's worth, I hope you guys are here in this present time and using this time wisely. That's another thing I see a lot of people kind of talking about too in this moment of isolation. What are you going to do with your time? Are you going to use it wisely? Not me. No, sir. Been playing video games on the reg. But what I have been discovering, I have this weird quirk about me that I hate eating food with my hands. Like finger sandwiches, worst enemy. Cheetos, the vein of my existence. They're not my most favorite thing. And we had this, this apocalyptic size cheese ball thing that you get at Costco or Sam's. So we got it as a gag gift, I think, over Christmas. I didn't think it was funny because it was my worst nightmare because it's just cheese powder just kind of going everywhere. But I've been kind of munching on those when I get the munchies. But I've been finding unique, creative ways to eat them. It first started off with toothpicks. I graduated up to a fork and then a spoon. At one point, it was the straw. Like you suck on a straw, and then I would toss it up in the air, and I would try to catch it at the same time. That just became a mess. I was not liked around the house for that. So I've been finding unique, creative ways to do that. So I'm wasting my time, but that doesn't mean that you guys have to. I think it's a unique time and space to check out any opportunities. I don't know. That's kind of that hidden agenda or passion that you can work on. And of course, technology is there, right? You don't have to be so isolated, and especially, I don't know, songwriters, you could definitely partner up. Technology for musicians, going back and forth, recording things. And I'm starting to see a lot of people do pretty cool projects, like in their own isolation, record music and then share it, file share it, and then they shoot a video. So I've been seeing some pretty creative things, and that's something beautiful about the human spirit, right? There's these things that, that will try and attack you and force you into this mindset of isolation. And somehow we kind of shine on the other end. Humanity's beautiful. There's a bunch of assholes, but for the most part, humanity is beautiful. And I think something like this is showing up in that. So for what it's worth, everybody, happy isolation, but you don't have to be alone at all. Again, I'm always there. I'm either playing Fallout 4, worst idea you could probably ever have with talks of isolation and apocalypse, but I don't know. I'm a gamer, so that's where I'm at. And then I've been writing songs on my own, and of course, hanging out with the fam. So I need somebody else to talk to. This is my chance to kind of beg. So I'm alone with you. So let's talk. Add us in my podcast. But all that being said, we got some news around the bend. I'm going to do the music thing. I can't share it with you now. I can't share it. You got to wait. You got to wait. I understand that's annoying, especially if you're a gen pop. You see all these posts from artists and creatives saying, I got big news coming. Be sure to stay tuned. Are you really going to stay tuned? I think you'll just see it when you see it, right? So you'll see it when you see it. But something you don't have to wait for now is that convo with Aubrie Sellers. I've been a long-time fan of Aubrie. I think the first time I met her, I kind of germed her. I dug her music. And that's the most important thing to me as a human being. Like, what are you producing creatively? And then, of course, what are you saying? What are you doing with it? I think she's doing a lot of great stuff. She's got a pretty cool story. We can sit down. I got to know her in this most awkward, intimate setting of a phoner. Called her in. She was at a undisclosed bunker in Los Angeles. Ring her up. There's a lot of things that happened in Aubrie's life here recently. She released a record back in February. Perfect timing. Am I right? Far From Home. It's out, everybody. I think if you want to support creatives, the best way you do it is just buy their music. Second place, stream it. Third place, Napster still a thing? Is that people still steal music? Is that still a thing? I don't know. I guess some point of view, Spotify, you that's kind of stealing, right? I don't know. It depends on the side of the fence that you're on. But either way, I think if you crank up the tunes, I think she'd appreciate it. And of course, she had a record before that. New City Blues was on Warner Brothers, off the top of my head. But we go into it, that whole situation. We talk about her home life, her family life. She's a little bit Texas, a little bit Nash. She's got a cool thing going on. To me, it kind of reminds me what ZZ Top was kind of doing when they first busted on the scene. It was this rock thing, but enter Billy Gibbons. It became this blues thing. It became this little grungy little band from Texas. And it was uniquely different. I kind of look at Aubrie like that too. It's just it's different, but it's awesome. For this little rocker heart of mine, I think I'm always going to stay in tune with artists just like that. And I don't know. I appreciate people like Aubrie kind of sticking to her guns. So I think you guys could really, I don't know, if you feel that, I think you can get something out of her story and our conversation. Go to AubrieSellers.com for all that Aubrie swag. Again, she's got a record. It's out. I think the best thing you do is that you people can go buy it. Go buy a piece of music. It'll be worth it. It's the experience of it all, right? It's AubrieSellers.com. And of course, give her a follow at Aubrie Sellers. So here we are. We're just kind of jumping into it.
Hello?
Hey, is this Aubrie?
Hi, yes.
Oh, shit. Okay, awesome. This is Brandon.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm awesome. I had to get up for 1 second, and then I saw I got a missed call. I was hoping it wasn't Comcast. That was my biggest thing.
No. Why? What's Comcast doing?
Are you serious? Wait, well, are you in LA right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Comcast is the worst. They just call everybody at the worst times to try to upsell them on everything. And this is my basic daily struggle life. Like, take me off your list, but I'm still on
Yes.
this mystery list. And they like to give me calls.
They
So,
are the worst. Yeah, when we were in Nashville, I feel like, oh yeah, dealing with them at any time was the worst.
yeah, we're not sponsored by them in any way, so it doesn't hurt us. They absolutely suck. But I got a call like yesterday, like during this crazy time of them trying to like upsell me on like a deluxe internet package.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
So
like, hello.
yeah, I know you're just doing your thing, but I got no thing to give you to
Yeah.
give me higher internet.
Exactly.
My life. Yeah, so you got to tell me. You got to tell me emotionally, mentally, physically, what's going on right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just been a crazy time, despite, I mean, not just this whole, coronavirus thing, but then, the tornado hit Nashville right before that. And just lots of crazy stuff has been happening all at once. And so, and this all happened a couple weeks after my record came out. And so it just kind of put everything on pause and, all the stuff we'd been working towards just kind of stopped. So, so we're just coping and hanging in there and figuring out how to live until we can go on tour again in, the fall.
Yeah, right. Your record, speaking of that, I think that's kind of an interesting thing to bring up because you just released it and now you can't do anything with it. And so it's just kind of like that thing of, well, oh shit, I just have this thing out and I can't do anything except phoners in my living room.
Yeah. It's very strange.
Are you doing anything right now, like as when it comes to like promoting yourself or like doing any kind of like live shows, like you and Ethan like doing stuff? Are you guys doing anything during this crazy time?
Yeah, we're going to do some live streams and, I'm hosting a radio show and some things like that are, keeping me a little busy. And then we're just working on music ourselves and all kinds of stuff like that. But, it's funny because a lot of people are like, the music industry has been hit so hard, and it's very true. We obviously have. And this has been a big hit to me because all this stuff we've been working towards and making this album is just kind of crushed. But, so many people are affected by this that I don't even see how they could get on to a live stream and give, so it's kind of like a time where everybody's hurting and it's just one of those things where, I don't know, we just have to, we never would have expected this to happen. And now we just have to deal with it,
Well, I mean, we've hung out once and I was thinking about this today that you remember that one time we hung out and like we were within like 6 inches away from each other. And then now we're in this point in time where it's going to be awkward, I feel like, because are you in quarantine mode? Are you like really taking this pretty seriously?
Yeah, we haven't left in 2 weeks. Ethan, my boyfriend who I live with, has an autoimmune thing, so he's kind of high risk.
Yeah.
So I just don't even take any risks. So yeah, we haven't been out of the house in 2 weeks.
Yeah, of course. And so I kind of wonder, like, when we actually all go out in society, are we gonna be like homeschool kids at prom? Like we're just gonna be in a room and we just kind of don't know what to do with one another. Like I
thought about that too, because even when normal life kind of starts to resume, I mean, people it's not going to be eradicated,
No.
So people are going to be nervous and, and I think about that too, even with shows that we're rescheduling for the fall, I can't imagine that I would want to go out to anything, you know what I mean, for a long time.
Of course.
So yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to be, people are going to be concerned, at least some people.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, like the after effect. Like, what's that going to do to your psyche? Like, that's like VIP lines or like autographs, like just being like with random people. And this thing isn't going to go away, like it's
totally.
just...
And for me, like, if it were just me, I wouldn't, I mean, I don't want to get it and I don't want to spread it to anyone else, but I think I'm hyper aware because having someone in your house that has autoimmune, and also in my band, so on tour, I'm worried about, talking to people, which I always do. I always go out after the show and talk to people at the merch table, and I'll be worried about that and then bringing that backstage with me or into the van with me, So, yeah, that's something that I'm going to be thinking about, and I'm sure other people will too.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because I really have this opinion that, tours and like people in bands and kids are just walking cesspools of germs. Like you just carry they just carry everything, and like you just feel dirty all the time. Yeah, that's a real thing. I'd never thought about it that way, but that's definitely got to be going through your psyche.
Yes.
I know you have a Nashville legacy situation like in your family tree, but where are you from? Are you from Texas or Nashville? Like, where were you born?
I was born in Nashville. I consider myself to be a dual citizen.
Yeah,
I got my first license in Texas, so I'm kind of, all my family lives there, and my grandparents and everybody. So, kind of both. I grew up in both.
Yeah, but where in Texas?
In East Texas, near Tyler, is where my mom's family is from, and my dad's family was from around Gilmer, which is not too far, and then my stepdad's family is from Houston.
Dude, I'm going to blow your mind just for a second. I'm from East Texas, too.
Oh, really?
And I've played in Gilmer. And
oh, really?
There is nothing in Gilmer. Like, it is an East Texas, like, wasteland of awesome, like, burger joint on the corner, like, mom and pop shop, and then that's about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually where my grandparents live now is it's growing. We would still consider it tiny, but it's Tyler's getting really big. So
Tyler's insanely awesome right now.
Yeah.
Like, whatever money is pouring into that town, like, there's tons of opportunities there.
Yeah, for sure.
Or than where it was. I mean, it's not Las Vegas by any means, but it's just kind of like, what is this place? I mean, this is Las Vegas of Texas. Like, this is
It's
a
so
way
funny.
different town.
When my grandmother comes to Nashville, she's like, I don't know how y'all deal with all this traffic. And I'm like, you need to come to LA.
Right. Oh, man, that's funny. My mom does the same thing. Like, she basically carries like a brown paper bag, like if she's ever in Nashville, and when she's driving, she just cannot take it.
Yeah,
Cannot take it. Anxiety overload.
for sure.
Oh, man. But okay, so where is mom from in Texas?
She's from Jacksonville, which is
okay.
outside of Tyler.
All right, so definitely roots in Texas. Everybody's still there. But let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Who's mom and dad?
My mom is Leanne Womack, country singer, and my dad is Jason Sellers, who is a songwriter and he was an artist as well, and played with Ricky Skaggs and Vince Gill when I was little, and then my stepdad is Frank Liddell, who owns a publishing company and he's a producer. Has produced Miranda Lambert and a bunch of people. So I've been surrounded by music my whole life, and my dad grew up playing in a gospel group called the Singing Sellers with his parents. So music goes back, it's kind of all we know.
Yeah, you guys are you. I mean, like, you're just oozing, like, in music. Like, I mean, it is literally in your DNA because, I mean, every one of those people from Jason, Leanne, and I mean, Frank as stepdad, like, there's nothing to sneeze at, like, at any of their careers. Like, even Jason, like, I was even looking at his stuff and I knew he was an artist, but I couldn't remember, like, his songs, like, in the mid 90s. But that dude was stacked. I mean, I bet, like, Lone Star stacked, like, but Jason Sellers kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he was like that kind of, like, vocalist. Like, it was like power vocal, like country music kind of thing.
Oh yeah, he's one of the
mid-90s.
best singers I've ever heard in my life, and that's not just because he's my dad.
Right, he's insanely good. Like,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, Don't You Want to Stay? I mean, that's like hearing him sing that song is crazy. Like, you think like Kelly Clarkson, like, is amazing, like doing her thing, but then like when Jason sings it, holy shit, like, it's insanely good.
That's awesome.
And like Leanne, like, she's close to my heart. because I Hope You Dance was played at graduation for me.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? What song did they play it at your graduation by chance?
So I was middle school age. Well, I was actually, when the song came out, I was like 8 years old, but it was still popular. They still played it at dances in like middle school, and I would get so embarrassed.
Of course.
So embarrassed.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, oh, mom, I can't escape mom. Like, she's at home,
exactly.
and then now she's here in this garage party right now.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a song, there's kind of a deep cut song I love by Leanne. Last Call. Do you happen to know that song?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I know most of them.
yeah, I love that song. She wrote it with Shane McAnally. It's one of my favorite. I love her version of Long Black Veil too.
Oh yeah, that's on her newest record, or one of the newer ones.
Yeah, it's one of the newest ones.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think it's the record like the smoky one, or like the black cover one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a fan. Of course, Frank. I mean, Miranda Lambert. Done. That's all we can say. Like, Frank's awesome in his own right, but most people probably know him for like Miranda Lambert cuts and records and stuff.
For sure. That's a big accomplishment that people would know him for.
Dude, you are so stacked. All right, so the thing I have, because I've had these conversations like with Derek Wells and like Natalie Hemby, like people like so ingrained like in music, like they go home and it's there. Like their families are in the business. Like they are the business. Was this an impression on you growing up? Like, did you know what mom and dad or even stepdad like did or what they do and their legacy that they were building?
For sure. I mean, my mom homeschooled me, and I grew up on the road a lot of the time. I went to regular school as well, but especially when I was younger, I was just in it all the time. I mean, so I was completely submersed and I think that I picked up a lot of, like a lot of people ask, what's the best advice they've given you? And it's more like I just saw it all. You know what I mean?
Right,
it wasn't really like I sat there and was like, hey, I heard you guys might be in the music business and I wanted to get some advice. It's more like this is just what I've lived and breathed since I was a little girl. And so I've definitely been around it a lot, but also the business has changed a ton, and my career path and music haven't been anything like my mom's. And so, it's kind of something that even after seeing and experiencing all this yourself, it's still a journey that you have to find on your own and kind of figure out your own path and how you're going to do things. And so I've definitely been around it a lot, and there's definitely been times too. And I think a big part of the reason I moved to LA was because being from Nashville and being surrounded by only that my entire life, I got a little bit like, I need to get out of here. Like I need to, have a different experience just for my own personal growth and in life. And so, I've definitely been surrounded by it.
That seems to
forever.
be a pattern. Yeah. That seems to be a pattern, like from people I've talked to of like that they're so, desensitized by Nashville. And it's just kind of like, I got to get the fuck out. Like, I got to figure something else out. And then, usually LA is the move.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, when you're around one thing, it helps to remove yourself. I think it's funny because a lot of people view LA as like an entertainment business town, and it's like shallow and whatever, but LA is a huge city, and it's not just entertainment business, and
right.
And I think that just getting away from the same things you've always been around and, just kind of, I was able to come out here and just be completely anonymous because I don't know anyone. I know 2 people here, so I just did when I moved here. So It was like I could go anywhere and not see anyone, and just it was a very freeing feeling. And I think that's an important thing if you've been around one thing your whole life, you can kind of become jaded very easily. and so I think it was time for me to, get out of that a little bit and kind of experience something else.
Yeah, I get that. All right, let's rewind just a little bit. Tell me about childhood, because you mentioned homeschool, you're on the bus, and I can only assume formative years, like this is when Leanne like is hot. Like she's on the road, like she's filling up seats. And so I kind of want to get a feel of like what your childhood was like, especially living on a tour bus, if that was the case.
Yeah, some of my earliest tour memories were, like she was on that. George Strait did a really big like arena or stadium tour where he had like stages outside and he had tons of bands on, and Mom was on that tour. And
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and so that was one of the earliest memories. Like, I remember Nokia was one of the sponsors, and I got my first cell phone.
So you could play Snake. I mean,
yes, Snake. And then I had it, because with my mom working all the time, and she wanted me to have a phone. But it was totally different back then. Plans and things weren't expensive like they are now. And
right.
so my mom, there was some mix up with the bill one month, and my mom came to me and was like, Aubrie, this bill is so much. Have you been just calling everyone? I was like, no, I swear to you, I've used the phone like one time. Anyway, they ended up getting it figured out and figuring out that my phone bill was like 67 cents or something. Like, can you imagine having like your cell phone bill be that cheap?
Oh man, I wish it was that cheap right now in the current situation. Because my cell phone bill is what's going to set me over, like taking me to the poorhouse.
I know.
67 cents.
Anyway, but yeah, I grew up on a tour bus, and she homeschooled me and had all my school supplies in a tackle box. And then she was a great teacher. By the time I went to regular private school, I was grade levels ahead of everyone. So she did a really great job.
Oh, wow. So you're like a successful, like homeschool kid situation.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Well, what about like, I feel like some of my childhood memories are like with friends and like going to like a friend's house and like hanging out. Like, do you have those, or like, did you just strictly stick with the tour bus and like your friends were the bass player?
I was definitely around a lot of adults. And I think it probably influenced my personality, but they have kids, so I was around them too, and my cousins, and so it wasn't like, I think that's a big misconception about homeschoolers, that you just never have any social contact with anyone.
I already made a joke about it. I'm so glad that you're a homeschool kid. And you took it. You took it. It was great.
But yeah, it's, I think it's great to not only be socialized around people your own age, but I think it's great to be socialized around people of all ages. So I was able to do that, and I love homeschooling, and I did it more than I went to regular school, and I also did it 3 years of high school, and so I enjoy learning, and I'm very happy that was my experience.
Yeah. When did Jason and Liam divorce? Was it before?
I was like 5 or 4 or something. So yeah, I was really young.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're really young, but that's pretty formative years. I know my wife has the situation that her parents divorced, I think when she was like 3 or 4. And yeah, it did kind of, and it still has like still kind of a toll on her, for whatever that's worth. Do you have that same impression, that same feeling?
I know that when I was younger, I just wished they would be together. I think that's a common thing when you're a kid, but it's also that, I've known it almost my whole life. So it's not really like, I've found that when people's parents get divorced when they're in high school or college, it really affects them a lot, because that's been their whole reality their whole life.
That's my situation.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I feel like when it happens when you're that young, it's just kind of all you know. And the great thing is, I'm probably able to say that too, because they've always been very friendly, and there's never been any issues like that, so it's never felt like tension or any weirdness.
So it wasn't like a ugly divorce battle situation, pulling the kid back and forth.
Yeah, it was totally like they were fine. So, I never saw any of that or anything.
Okay. All right. Everything sounded kind of normal to me. Like there's no there's no issues quite as yet, right? So where does music kind of land for you then? I mean, it's around you obviously, like growing up, but when did it like become a thing for you? Like when did it become this huge imaginative thing in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, like I said, singing and all that, but I got my first guitar when I was 13, and I think when I started focusing on learning how to play the guitar and listening to artists that I admired, like Patty Griffin, and then rock music and things that I was learning on my own, and I was hugely influenced by Buddy and Julia Miller, and so listening to all that and playing that stuff on the guitar, I think is what kind of made me think, oh, I can write songs and all that. But I didn't start thinking about seriously pursuing it as a career until I was probably 19 or 20 or maybe even 21.
That's insane at 13. Like Patty Griffin, like just has a sound and a vocal quality I think anybody can like lean toward,
Yeah, she's the best.
It's amazing. But what's crazy in my imagination is that like you threw out Buddy Miller and like you were listening to that stuff like at 13.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was cutting, his songs when, long before that. And so it was just, I was around all that. You're, very familiar with all that music. And I listened to Steve Earle as a kid and a lot of bluegrass. And I was just, and I also grew up in the era where streaming became a thing, so I had access to all the music of the world.
Yeah, all the music of the world. I'm still fascinated by the Buddy Miller thing because I guess I can understand it. Like if it's just around, you listen to it. Like your mom's working on a project, you hear it on the background, you hear it so much, boom, it's in your kid imagination as a 13-year-old. But I feel like to say that Buddy Miller's an influence, like early music life and development, because it's not written like for kids, it's not written for this pop element of like repetition. Like it's very like rootsy, like gritty stuff. Like it's not like this polished sheen thing where everybody can gravitate toward.
For sure.
So I think that's insane that you kind of gravitated, or you even mentioned that as an influence like early on.
Well, I love Julie, his wife, and her songwriting and her records and her voice and everything. I just really, I don't know if it's because, I love them both, but I loved her records. And I remember my mom told her, and she sent me a bunch of CDs, like her older CDs over that. I don't even know if you could find them on the internet at the time. So I got to listen to all those, and so, yeah, I had always been drawn a little bit towards that, and going back to childhood stuff that you were talking about, I think being around the entertainment industry and seeing how people treated my mom when she was around and then acted when she wasn't around, and just seeing a lot of kind of the phoniness and grossness surrounding the entertainment industry. I don't know if that had something to do with me being drawn to some of this like more emotional kind of deeper music, but and also just being, like you said, having access to it. But I think that I think that being around the entertainment industry that young kind of breeds a little bit of mistrust in you and maybe makes you feel a little bit like an outsider. And so and even as a kid, going to friends' houses and stuff, I would just, see them act like, I had a friend ask me one time, are you at your mom's house or your dad's house? And so those things happen to you when you're really little and becomes a really formative part of you and makes you feel like question people's intentions and your value and all that stuff. And so that's definitely the side of all of that had a big impact on me, and I think made me hopefully more aware and more empathetic of how I treat others.
Yeah, that's the sleaziness of entertainment. I feel like
Sure.
It's like very rare, few cases, I guess, unless you're Madonna, that like the artist is just like a plain jerk. Like it really is like the people like around creating that sleazy environment where they're just different plastic people. Like I feel that, and that's like the negative side effect of whatever this fame thing is, like people's reaction around you. Like it gets really germy and it's weird, and I don't know, it's a very Stepford situation. It's just all fake.
For sure. And like we were talking about moving out to LA and all that, or just getting out of that particular, section of the business that I've been around my whole life, even as a young person making music, you're kind of questioning, at least maybe from being around it and being more jaded than a lot of people who had just moved to town, you're just kind of you're wondering what people's intentions are all the time. And you kind of feel this kind of Gurmy hungriness from everybody,
Yeah.
like they're really just trying to claw their way to the top. That's how
Yeah.
it felt to me. And so, just to kind of get away from that. And I was lucky to have friends and things that, most of my best friends are not in the music industry. And so that's a great thing because it really just helps me get out of that and have some normalcy. But,
What a weird thing, like as a kid, like learning how to filter people, like that's different because I don't know. I feel like I didn't learn that until like 20 something of watching people's desperation trying to claw to get something that few people can really have to begin with. And,
right.
And then just feeling that the claws like on your back. I didn't learn that until like I was in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think when you see it that young, it probably shaped my brain chemistry.
Yeah, of course it would. And you're a smart homeschool kid. Of course, it's like you're going to learn this shit early.
Yeah.
Man, how does that kind of affect you even now? Like, do you feel like you kind of filter people? Do you still like put on those peripheral like antennas of like, what's the situation? Is this a bad thing?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like no joke. Yeah. I mean, I definitely pay attention to that. And I think it's just something that's probably always going to be a part of me. Like, I try to be trustful of people, but I think if you've grown up and like we were talking about, like have that experience that young, then you're just going to have that filter on all the time. And,
yeah.
I think that I don't know if that's a part of human nature that can come out in anyone, or if it's just that certain types of people are drawn towards the entertainment industry, I like to think that it's, not everyone is like that, obviously. And so I just try to keep that in mind. And I try to really, not make my entire life about the industry. It's the music that's important to me, and so that's the part of it that I try to focus on. And I have other things that I do to kind of pull myself out of that world. And I think that's a little healthier way to live.
Have you ever heard this? Because I've heard it, and I feel like since you're so close in the situation, like people may not have like mentioned it to you, or they would have this conversation with you because of the gurminess of it, and it can just create the awkwardness of it. But have you ever felt like this impression or this thing in Nashville, like Nashville legacies or Nashville kids, like jumping into music? It's kind of like people kind of look at that as, like you don't get a pass, or like you almost get kind of disrespected like from the get-go.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you see it that way, because I think a lot of people see it, they think that having parents in the music business is a huge help to you. And in a way, of course, I've been around the music industry. I've been able to learn things that, maybe other people haven't. But I think that people don't understand that I think it creates a little bit of maybe bitterness towards you, and also a really high level of expectation. Like you have to be incredible first thing out of the gate.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
You impress me much, like from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And like, definitely. I think there's this like, well, you're only doing this because your family does music or whatever. That's been my experience of it. And that's why it was really important to me early on. I never talked about my mom in interviews and tried to stay away from it as much as possible. And to this day, people see me at shows and not know who she is. And that's really meaningful to me, not because I don't want to be associated with her, because I think she's incredible, but it's more just being able to carve your own path and stand on your own 2 feet. And I feel like if I indulge that, then people will, see me as using that as, riding on her coattails or whatever, which is something that I've always been very conscious of since I was little as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every human being craves an identity, and people attach that to a vocation. People attach it to things like I do this thing or I have this thing and this is who I am. And if people keep saying like your identity is with somebody else, I mean, that does so much to your psyche. I mean, that's a lack of identity.
And a good example, the other day I saw a list of songs somebody was playing on some show or something, okay? And they had all the artists listed, their song and then their name next to it. And it got down to mine, and it was my song, my name, and then in parentheses, Leanne Womack's daughter.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And you're like, why can't I just be myself? Why do I always have to be attached to this thing? And it just becomes, like you said, it's like you're like the I don't know what's the word, you're like the cliff note or something.
Yeah, you're the cliff note. Yes. Wow.
So I think that a lot of people don't realize that that's the true experience of it. And it may be different for other people, and I know a lot of people are really embrace who their parents are and go out on the road with them, and that's great. And maybe they're probably more evolved and more brave than I am to do that, because I would love to play music with my mom, but I'm too afraid that it's going to overshadow me.
Yeah. So is that a thing in your head? Is there a fear of that? Especially the overshadowedness. Sure. I mean, that's a real constant fear in your life.
Oh, since the beginning. I mean, first of all, it's like there's very few artists, but there have been, artists that have made successful careers that were kids of artists. But, I think that's a thing you definitely worry about and crosses your mind, because that's been my experience so far, of it. And fortunately, my music has been different enough, and I think I've been able to create enough separation to where that hasn't been a huge factor. This is probably the longest conversation I've ever had about it.
No, it's great.
but it's definitely something I think about a lot.
Well, I mean, why would you not think about it? I feel like if you don't think about it, or you go through therapy and like figure this thing out, like you're always going to be like wrestling with your identity. Because I really truly feel like people, I mean, normals, gen pops, like they have an identity and they know what that is. Like, well, I work at a paper mill and I'm associated with that. But then when people like in press or in media or entertainment, they associate things, it does something to your psyche. And, being in entertainment itself, it already it messes with your head. I mean, you're already narcissistic enough. I mean, you're in this business, and then when they attach this, narcissistic thing to you, it's with all these accolades, 100%. It's almost like when they say daughter of Leanne Womack, it's like, okay, well, now Leanne Womack is getting
you're not worth enough on your own, like it devalues you.
Yeah, man,
that's
tough. That's a tough thing to constantly deal with. But honestly, you're kind of doing your own thing. You said it earlier. I mean, like the sounds of your records to like living in LA, like you just kind of put, I don't know, like a median in the road, and you said that you're going to jump on this side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very much like, like I said, I'm going to do my own thing. And I really love my parents and think they're extremely talented and appreciate everything they've done. But, definitely have to live my own life and create my own thing. And hopefully, and people seem to be seeing it for that, as well. So at least some people. So I'm grateful for that.
All right, so you mentioned earlier that you were like 19 or so, like you really started like wanting to do this full time, or you started doing it full time. Like, what was it?
When I was 13, you said I started playing guitar and all that. When I was like, I would say probably, I think I was 21 when I started like writing.
Okay, 21.
With the intention of like purposely probably going to make a record or pursue that.
So something within you said, like, whatever this thing is, it's bubbling over, I got to put this out in the world. So
for sure.
I know in 2016, New City Blues came out, but I mean, is that what you were like literally like writing for? I mean, like, was there any like development like in your head, or like, because I know Frank produced that record, like how did that whole situation leading up to like New City Blues work out in your life?
Yeah, I think it was a very organic process. I just started writing, and a friend introduced me to Adam Wright, who I wrote with a lot and played on both my records, and he was a big part of that too. We after I got some songs that I liked, I went in with Adam and Frank, and we just did some like guitar vocals, and we kind of messed around with that, and that's kind of how the whole electric sound came about. We originally went in and did some just acoustic guitar vocals, and I was like, this is so boring to me. We need to and I think Frank realized like how much, after me sitting down and playing a bunch of records I loved, realized, how much kind of rock and electric guitar played into it. And so we went back and did some more guitar vocals that were electric. And so it was just kind of this organic process. And then we went in and did some pre-production with some other musicians. And it was a long process too. I started doing this in 2013, and the record didn't come out until 2016. So it was just nothing rushed, you know what I mean? Especially since it's my first record. It was just making sure that what we did was 100% me and unique, hopefully. And so, that was kind of the process of making that first record. And then we actually recorded a bunch of it and then went back a year later and recorded a few more songs. So it was just a lot of time to let everything breathe and settle and figure out exactly what was right.
I like time, like personally. Like I just kind of feel like, especially records are so important to me, and especially I just love when artists like will spend that time to make a record, because like when I first started, really like hoofing it and doing stuff in studios, like bands were doing stuff like for like a year or two. They'll spend an entire week on a snare sound, like for a record. But I mean, now it's just like you can get through like a whole record in a day, like that Florida Georgia Line, a bad example, but that Florida Georgia Line record, like with Cruise, like it was literally done like in 2 days. And
really?
Oh yeah, it was done so quick. I mean, there was only one player like on the entire record, and the rest was basically photoshopped. So yeah, but just that thing of time. All right, so New City Blues, and Frank was doing it. Were you on a label at that point? Like, did you sign anything? Were you working just with Carnival exclusively? Like, what was that?
Just completely independent. With Carnival. And then, when it came time to put it out, I put it out on 30 Tigers. And, I kind of had this vision. I knew I had to have creative control, and that was why 30 Tigers is so appealing to me. And a million things happened in the business, and I got a new manager, or my first manager, after all this process had kind of been going already, and then about a year after that signed to a major label. And they, it had always been my hope that I could have creative control over my music and still be able to do what I wanted. And I thought that if I put out my record independently and then, people were interested in it, then maybe that would be kind of my chance to take a shot at the major label system. And so Warner Brothers signed me, and they paid for me to make the second record. And kind of as the story goes for a million people, it just wasn't the right fit. And so I was able to take this record and also release it independently, which is great.
Doesn't fit. Like, it doesn't fit like with what the market is doing, or like what Warner Brothers like had in their roster.
I think that a lot of, I think that what I'm doing isn't easy to plug into the system that a major label already has going, and so you either have to change what you're doing, or they have to change what they're doing, and come up with a new way to do it. And if you're both kind of just going to do things the way you do them, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm not willing to change the music. And so, that's kind of, I think, what happens to a lot of artists that sign to majors. And I think, I don't think necessarily people enter into it with bad intentions. I just think that when it comes down to actually figuring out how to make something that's unique work, you're going to have to come up with a unique plan and approach, and that's just not always possible, I think. And so it became clear that, the best way to work this record would be similar to how I worked the first one.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, I have so much to this that it's crazy to me that it's something that is just so awesome. I mean, like, include you in that, include anybody else. But then when they work with a label or whatever, the man, and it's something that is so good. and we can all agree of like, oh man, this is so good, but what do we do with it? You know,
Yeah.
like, well, put it out, do your thing.
I mean, to us, it seems so simple, but I don't know. After being around this business my entire life, I still don't understand it. I don't think it really makes sense.
No, of course not. Okay, so I started in my imagination going back to 2016 and like what was happening like on radio or just even what was out there. And I knew Miranda Lambert's like The Weight of the Wings like was already out, and I remember Pink Sunglasses being on that record. It had like a fuzz thing, and it just had this kind of some of the same elements like your sound did, but her whole record wasn't that. And I think Little Red Wagon was even before that or shortly after.
Yeah, I think Weight of the Wings hadn't been out yet when my record came out, but I don't think. And then it came out maybe right after. But yeah, Platinum, I think, was the one before that.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, it had Little Red Wagon and all that on it. Especially when we made the record, which was like 2013. But yeah, I actually sang on that record. So.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What'd you sing on?
I sang on Platinum and Girls, I think.
I like Girls. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing in my imagination head is that, this is something like the market kind of liked, it's out there, and you would assume like an artist comes along and like this is authentically who they are, and they, grab hold of this sound and expand it even more. And then the business kind of just says, we still don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't understand that. And maybe that's just kind of where we leave it because we both don't understand it. But it's my imagination going overboard of like, and this isn't a cut down, but this isn't a new thing. Like, it's there. People love it. But here's a new thing that people that liked it, here you go.
For me, it was especially confusing because I never, ever in my career have presented myself to anyone on the business side of things as wanting to do anything other than what I've been doing. I was very upfront about how much I wanted creative control, how much this is the kind of music I make, how much, and so when I did make a record, like you said, that from all of our standpoint, musicians and everybody involved seemed to us like, just like you said, an expansion of what I've already done. That it was very confusing to me. Like, what did you expect me to make?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't understand where anything would have gotten lost in translation. Like,
there were too many white 40-year-old gray-haired men like in the business room, long table, not listening. Like, because I kind of feel like, if you were honest from the beginning, and it sounds like you said this, that it's not going to change. And go do your thing. Like, it's still so mind-boggling to me that, and I talk to these business people too, and it's all like money and cents, but all the money and cents would think to point in this direction of, oh, we should invest because there's a clear-cut path of, oh, people are kind of gravitating toward this way, let's make more of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know where that fits, like in what Warner Brothers were doing at the time, but I don't know. So many good records and artist careers. They just get ruined because it's stupid shit like that.
Yeah, like you said, it happens over and over and over again, and it's just so funny. I think it comes down to, for me, and thinking about it, and I have no idea, but what it looks like to me is that truly business and art don't really mix, and they kind of inherently harm one another. And at their best, they can, lift each other up in ways. But, I think that business in particular, if you're approaching music from a business standpoint, it's going to harm the music and the art of it, and so it's just kind of a difficult thing, and you just have to, it's basically like you accidentally have to have the perfect cocktail of people and companies and timing and, everything to make something work in a certain way. And so I think that's I think that no matter how much you think you know about the business, or you've been around it, or you think you can plan or whatever, I think a lot of it is really out of your control at the end of the day, and it just happens to come down to timing and people involved and all of that. So I think you just the good news is now there's so many different options that there weren't before. It used to be if you were on a major label and it wasn't working out for you, that might be the end of it for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You may never recover, and you may not have another way to get your music out. And so fortunately, we do have a way to keep trucking. And there's different companies now, like Soundly, who put out my record, who's incredible. They do distribution, but they're a great partner to have as an artist, because they still get a lot of that stuff done that would be difficult for you to do on your own, but you still have control over your creative, the creative aspects of it. And so we definitely have a lot of different options now, which is incredible. But it's still, major labels still own a big part of the game.
Yeah. Oh man. Yes. I mean, people are saying that like they're not making money, like their buildings are still getting bigger. I mean, there's a lot less people working in them.
People are saying, no, the artists aren't making any money.
Radio edit. Yes. Man. That's but so from Far From Home, I mean, that was released just in February. But there was like a 4 years difference between those two records. Was a lot of that because of one, like creating the next record, two, the drama of everything, but then also the tour schedule. I mean, does that basically surmise the distance between those two?
Yeah, for sure. A big part of it was the heavy touring, on the first record. And then when it came time to make the second record, like you said, spend a little time doing that. But then a big chunk of it, about a year and a half, maybe more. Well, let's see. I started tracking the record in 2017. So 3 years from when I started making it to when it came out. Yeah. So a big part of that, a huge part of that was, just the kind of red tape of getting off the label and then figuring out what to do with it, finding new management, finding new label and all of that. And so that was a big part of it too. And definitely a time where I, now looking back at it all, I mean, I'm able to kind of see that it was for the best. But then, I wasn't expecting all of that to happen. And, it's kind of like what we're going through now. It's like just timing and crazy stuff that you never saw coming.
Yeah. Well, I still have problems. I still have problems with Warner Brothers with the issue New City Blues, because I remember when that record came out, and I told you when we first met, I kind of gurmed you, I'll be honest, of like, I've been a fan for like a long time. But I remember when that came out and just thinking, holy shit, I really hope country or just whatever music kind of keeps going in this direction, whatever that is. And when the record came out, it wasn't a fail. In my eyes, it wasn't a failure because it even charted. Like there were some pretty top peak positions, right?
I mean, maybe not. I don't know. It did okay. I think from a label standpoint, it would not be a commercial success, of course, but yeah, I mean, we got a lot of buzz for sure, and a lot of touring, and I played 2 late night shows, and so there's a lot of, there's a lot. It seemed like it was people were responding to it,
Yeah, I love the response to it, and maybe just because I'm just a rocker at heart, and there's the indie side of me that loves alternative music and just that thing. But I don't know, like, was this ever a topic at the time? Because I mean, we're still talking 2016 up until now. Like, there's a lot of authority in your music, which I love, but is that a fearful thing? Is that like a discrediting thing of a woman being an authority of her music? Because you even said like you wanted to own your masters, you wanted creative control, but then you walk into a label situation where now they probably own your masters and going through that red tape, but then also audibly, sonically, the sound of it can be a scary thing for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, like you said, imagine what's on the radio during that time and then playing some of my record in between those songs,
Right,
it was definitely a push, and it would be something that you as far as the business side of things, as a label and management, you would have to push really hard to push through, because it's so different, and it's much easier for people to go with what's familiar to them, and so yeah, I think that all of that is true. And I also think that people aren't used to someone who's just starting out in the business being so familiar with how it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that in that way, I think I was just naturally, not only is the music aggressive, but then just, I think that in some ways people were kind of taken aback by how much I knew about how everything worked, and so I just think that, I don't know, that could, affect how people view you. And also, they're not playing women on the radio either. I mean, it's just like it's just kind of stacked against you in a lot of different ways. And I think no matter if you're a man or a woman making music that's different than what's on the radio, it's going to be hard for you. And then that's just another layer of it as well. And so, Miranda's been able to do it, but not many others have, so it's just it's just kind of a big challenge. And I think that, as a label, they're business people, and they're not going to pour money into something that's going to take that long to have a return on,
Yeah, they don't take risks. I mean, it's a business, and art is a risk,
And it's always been that way, but it's getting worse, I think, because they're doubling down now on what's easy and familiar for them and easier for them to make money on, because they have to, because the business is losing money in that traditional way, and that traditional model. And the same thing's happening with radio. It's kind of in a lot of ways dying. The traditional model is dying, and so instead of taking risks, they're doubling down on what's easier for them and what they know will work. So it's in that way creating a challenge, I think, for people who are doing something different and taking creative risks. And so that's just kind of where we are. But, the business is going to continue to evolve. And I think if they don't start taking risks, they're not going to last much longer.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. But who knows? I mean, because I feel like for the big business of music, and we're talking like big music labels, anywhere from Sony or Warner Brothers, Universal, like if it ever becomes a situation, there's going to be a bailout. Like the government's going to step in, and like it's just going to become a huge, big, problematic airline situation that we had a couple of years ago.
So true.
But I don't know. I value, especially outside looking in, your career, because it's the thing of a strong woman with authority that's educated, that walks into a boardroom and knows what she's talking about. And then Mr. Monopoly at the end of the board table, whatever record label's just like, well, let me tell you how to do it, little missy. And then you rattle the cage, but then they also rattle your cage. Like when they basically put the kibosh on everything. Right? I mean, that does something obviously to your psyche. I feel like the biggest middle finger that you could do, which is awesome in my eyes, is that you come out with Far From Home, and like it's still your brand. Like it's still like your record. Like you can tell, this is an Aubrie Sellers record. Like she's not changing for the man.
And I think that's something that a lot of people around me had a hard time understanding fundamentally was, if they couldn't understand how if they didn't get the record, that why I would still want to put it out. Like, what I mean? They didn't understand that part of it. And it was like, I had to explain to them, and of course, as a business person, they don't want to hear this. And I totally understand that. But also it's like, I can go in and make more music for you, but it's not going to be any different than this. You know what I mean? This is what I make. And to make anything else would make me feel like crap. It would make me feel like I'm not being myself, and so, at the end of the day, if that means I'm not going to have success, then that's fine, to me, because I'm not going to make anything else. And I hope and I believe that there are other people out there who connect with this, and hopefully that's the case. But if not, this is what I make, this is me. Art to me and music to me are an expression of myself and my experience and what my taste, that's the only reason I make it, is to connect with others and that have that experience and want to connect with someone's true self and experience. And so, I think from a business standpoint, people who view this as a business only have a really hard time grasping that concept. And maybe that's because haven't created anything, or, aren't creative types. I'm not sure, but that seems to be something that fundamentally I run up against, as a artist.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to start putting words in your mouth, because I feel like if I was writing a script for your movie up until this point, like, this record still establishes your brand and your identity, but then it also says that this is your superhero, like, Wonder Woman moment. Like, I'm not changing. Like, this is pretty much it, and then, fade to black. Like that. Like, I feel like this is a really important record. If I had to put that in your mouth, like, this is an important record for you, maybe because of that, but also I'm sure other things too.
It's not, and this is the other thing, is I wanted people to understand too at the same time, it's not because I'm just being a stubborn a-hole, like, it's just because this is who I am. I just don't understand why you would want me to not be who I am, and so, and that goes for everyone. I want everyone to be who they are. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's not like a selfish thing. Everyone should be the truest expression of themselves. That's what people connect with at the end of the day, and so, that's where I say music and business don't really mix, but, hopefully, I think people are really starting to understand that and find other avenues of releasing and find other avenues of discovering music, which has been great.
Yeah, but this record, I love the sound of it. Like, Tarantino, Quentin, like, he's my, like, top 3 directors, and I feel like, dude, like, your music could fit on, like, any movie that he puts out. Like, it just has that vibe.
I love that. I'm a huge Tarantino fan, and
For real?
I was listening to a ton of his soundtracks and stuff when I was writing and preparing to make this record. Yeah, and that's a big part of the reason why I went to Sonic Ranch, which is outside of El Paso, to make the record. That was kind of the whole vibe that I had in my head when making this album, and I'm hugely inspired by all that. I also wrote a bunch of I went out to Marfa, Texas, if you've ever heard of that, which is like this artist town in the middle of Texas.
Yeah.
And it's in the desert, for anyone who doesn't know. And I took my camper out there for like a week and wrote a little bit for this record. And so all of that really kind of influenced the vibe and where my head was at when I was making it.
Wow, that's cool. There's a lot of, like, breakout tracks, or, like, tracks that that I'm drawn to. Like, one of them was Run. Run was, like, the most, like, cinematic one to me, but it's so simple, and it had impact on me because I feel like I'm a runner, like, in life, in situations. Like, I tell people I'm a professional ghoster. Like, I'm totally happy to walk away or not even show up for a situation. But authentically and emotionally, like, I run, and just that hook, you run until the memories just come undone. Like, I simply, if something's not good for me, like, I just run. And especially bad memories, I just kind of want to walk away from it. But that song, it's so different in the course of the record. That's why it kind of just stuck out to me, because it's a pretty bold statement to kind of do a very sparse song, like, in the middle of a record. That's a risk.
You.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a mover for sure. And it's funny because we were talking about taking time making the music and all that, which is really important to me. I never want to force things, but I'm also, at the same time, I'm really impatient. So for me, that song's a little bit about that feeling that I always have to keep moving and keep moving forward. That's the only thing that makes me feel okay,
That's cool. I like that. There's tons of stacked songs, but even sonically, it's different than the past record. Like, to me, it still has, like, your brand, but then I feel like it's way moodier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Is that a real thing? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, it's definitely vibey, I think maybe would be the word I would use, in a way of, like, it's got a little bit more warmth, and, like, my first record was gritty, but it was a little more, I think, defined sonically, and this is a little more of a mood and a feeling, and I think as a whole. And the records I listen to, that I like love were records that felt that way to me, that had a vibe to them and a cohesiveness. And Raising Sand by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, and
Oh man, that's a great
you know,
record.
yeah, that record in particular, I think had a huge influence on how I view albums. I think a lot of people now, they make singles and put them together and put them out as a record, and it's my kind of philosophy to look at music. The records I love all were made as a cohesive piece of music, and so I think that was definitely a big thing in my brain when I was making this record. And I think the ability for us all to go to Sonic Ranch and stay there together for a week and be completely immersed in that environment and immersed in just making the record and not going home at night to your family or whatever else, was also a big part of just creating a experience for a week and letting that be its own thing,
Yeah, I feel like there's something to that too. Like, I mean, you had most of the songs probably written, but did you write songs like in that time, like in the studio?
I didn't write songs, but for me, recording the song is still a part of writing it. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, because I don't do a bunch of demos and then play the demos and then have the players copy the demo. That's
Right,
not
right, right.
I write a song, I make a little work tape of it. To me, I'm imagining all these things in my head that are parts that are going to be played, or, just a vibe of the song. And then when we get in the studio, I feel like a big part of that is getting the right people in the room and then just letting everybody kind of experiment. And to me, that makes the song. I mean, the song to me that, isn't written until you're done recording it, or completely written. So that's a big part of it for me. And I had like over 20 songs or something that I brought in and kind of, I didn't go in thinking these are the 12 songs I'm going to record, so it was kind of just a more organic process and of hearing how everything's going and how everything fits together, and then just kind of putting together the puzzle as you're going and making the record.
Yeah, like even sonically too, like there's no influences. Like, I mean, there's little influences. Like, there's still that country thing. Like Under the Sun was like the most like country written song in my imagination. But then like going back even sonically, like, in that Tarantino thing, there was still like some California vibes, almost like a Dick Dale like drum rhythm thing, to like even some Beach Boys stuff. Like there was just like this. There's also a California vibe to it. I mean, and you live there, so obviously that's going to be a piece. But being immersed in that world of solo by yourself, you're just in middle of nowhere like Texas, somewhere in a desert in El Paso, and you're recording and you're immersed in your world. Like nobody else kind of has those Nashville influences. Nobody just kind of really has this New York or LA influence. Like it literally is like Aubrie Sellers like world, like at that moment.
Oh,
right?
that's awesome.
And that's what makes it a good record to me. Of like,
Thank you.
man, this is taking me in a place. It's taking me to a different place.
Well, I take that as the highest compliment, truly, because that's awesome. That's what I want music to do. And so the fact that you thought that my record did that makes me very happy. But, like you said, California vibes. I mean, I definitely listen to a lot of surf rock and stuff too. And I was listening to a lot of Ventures. I kind of made a playlist of Tarantino and the Ventures and, especially the Ventures in Space record. And to me, I call all that desert music, because that particular record is a little less surf rock and a little more, spacey, I guess, or whatever. And so I think a lot of that just came into my brain. But, I don't play that stuff when I get in the studio or play it for the players or anything like that, because I want it to be its own thing. But it's crazy how it still, at the end of the day, comes through and translates a little bit, It's also about the players, like Ethan, who, played on the record. Like you said, I mean, he loves Adventures. He loves Dick Dale. He loves Beach Boys, So a lot of it's about all of us just having similar influences and loving that stuff,
Yeah, Ethan's a badass. I love his playing. Like he's a good dude. That Haven't Kissed Me Yet, I think that was definitely like one of those songs. Oh, this is cleverly written. Like this is.
Oh, thank you.
This is a good song. But what's an important song to you in this record? I know that's kind of a dumb question because they're all important, right? But there has to be something like that really is biographical. It really hits home like every single time. You have like an emotional attachment to it. What's that song or songs?
Well, like you said, it's every song, but also Far From Home on this record. And the reason I
decided to make it the title track, just because, making this record, writing this record, I'd been touring for the first time. I'd put out my first album for the first time. I had been just experiencing a whole different life. And in a lot of ways it's amazing and expansive. And in a lot of ways it can be lonely. And a lot of, I'd signed with Warner and all that as well when I had written that. And so it felt a little bit like I was trying to find my place in the world. And so that song to me kind of just sums up that whole experience and feeling of that time for me. And, I think that I sat down and kind of when I was going through this whole label change and everything, I sat down and played the record for my friend Aubrie, who's a great artist and songwriter. And
yeah.
She listened to it. She sat there and listened to the whole thing with me. And then she was like, in a lot of ways, she was like, I feel like when you were writing these songs, you were kind of seeing the future in a little bit, and of your own future. I mean, and I do feel a little bit like that. Like I knew deep down a lot of this stuff was going to happen, and it was kind of coming out in the songs that I was writing for this record. And it was, and all my songs come from a really emotional, personal place. And so, that song in particular, I think just kind of sums up the whole experience for me.
Wow. I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really think I don't toss out compliments. Like it becomes this affirmation, like shower of rainbows on artists. But I don't know. There's just something about like your music. It's just kind of like, man, I really hope she wins. Like whatever this is worth, and I'm going to do my part because I think you're at least winning.
Thank you so much for being supportive. And it's weird to talk about yourself in depth for this long.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is, it's
this is it. Yeah, this is it. But I don't know. So especially you're indie now.
Yes.
And so it's just kind of hoping for the best, right? And especially in this awkward ass time, like you're just trying to figure out like, well, what's the next step?
Exactly. Yeah, it definitely feels like, wow, there's been a lot of weird timing and weird, crazy things happening. But like we said, I'm not the only one going through that, and so it's going to be another time of transition, and always just gotta, if there's one lesson I think that the universe has been trying to teach me, and maybe everyone, is it's to be adaptable.
Because what else can you do? I mean, you're stuck at home with a boy toy with a autoimmune situation.
Yeah.
Just take the world as it comes to you. I mean,
exactly.
Oh man, my heart goes out to everybody, especially in this. I have so much empathy and sympathy for everybody. But
well,
also,
you too, I know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like I'm pretty fulfilled because this is the most human interaction I have, like during the week. So I'm getting pretty fulfilled right now.
Yay.
Fulfilled. I'm fulfilled. Great conversation with Aubrie Sellers. You made it this far. You definitely know that was pretty legit convo. Aubrie Sellers, AubrieSellers.com. The record again, Far From Home. Go buy it. Go buy a piece of music. It'll be worth your little pennies right now to go get it. You can buy it at AubrieSellers.com, and you can also just stream it. If you're one of those, I'm your elder millennial speaking. You're welcome to go stream it wherever your favorite platform is, whatever you like to use. It's a good piece of art. I'm really proud of this record, what Aubrie did. It's there's like some poignant things. There are, of course, creatively in the headspace, what goes on sonically. It's all around. It's a great record. Far From Home. And of course, give her a follow at Aubrie Sellers. Well, that's it, kids. That's the end of this episode. Continue the conversation. Anything that you guys want to talk about, go to @SMI Podcast across the board on the social. You can also email me if that's your thing. Love mail, hate mail. Just don't send the mail. I'll return them. And sending people to the mail is a little awkward right now. Rona. You can go to smipodcast.com. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, you enjoyed this episode. You know what I would say? Just share it with a friend. That's all I ever ask for. The last thing you want is somebody to feel like they don't know or people don't understand how they feel. This is what that's out there for. Make you not feel so alone. We're going through it too. thanks guys for listening. Thanks guys for sharing. And I'll see you actually here really soon. We've got an episode coming out Thursday. So just subscribe, stay tuned, be well, be healthy, stay at home. All right, love you guys. Happy surviving.